Alright, so this is my Ableton track. It's kind of a dancey track at 118 BPM with some live guitars in there. So the first technique is a drum rack, and for my drum rack I've got an 808 kick, hi-hats, a snare which I've doubled with a clap, and 3 different conga sounds. And they're kind of playing intermittently throughout the song, with the congas coming in at some points. And I've EQ'd them all separately and stuff, and done kind of different compression and reverbs on each track. And with the snare and the clap, I've kind of EQ'd different areas of them to bring out the different frequencies for kind of a fuller snare sound. And for the instrument rack, I've got a bass track, and I've doubled 2 different bass sounds. One is like quite a deep subby bass, and one is this oscillating kind of saw bass, and so that's just so it sounds fuller but still has a kind of interesting texture to it. And they're both just EQ'd together, and I've brought up 100 hertz, which is kind of just keeping it separate from the kick that I've EQ'd in the drum rack. Yeah, to keep that separate. And yeah, so that's the instrument rack. For automation, I've got like a few auto filters throughout. One is just this high pass from the beginning for the first 4 bars, and then it just cuts down and takes off the filter. And also later, through this music bus here, I've got a low pass, which is just kind of adding to this build up before the drop. For the return track thing, I've got the conga track and these 2 doubled guitar tracks that I've sent to the reverb return, and that's just kind of a light reverb to glue it all together. So for the external instrument that I had, that was just a guitar which I recorded live, and I also did parallel compression on those guitar tracks. So I played the guitar tracks twice and panned them left and right, and then for each of those 2 tracks I separated out the highs in a different track and compressed the shit out of them, just so that they sounded tighter and kind of fuller, and panned them off way to each side. So the original tracks were at 40 and the parallel compressed tracks were at 50. And then for sidechain, I sidechained the bass to the kick, which is pretty standard for like dancey music. So it just kind of left a lot of room for the kick, since it's kind of the boss in dance music. And it has 50 millisecond release, just to add like a kind of extra rhythm to the track. And the automated effect, which I just mentioned before, was the high and low pass filters. And that's pretty much everything. So the last thing would be how it would be performed live. So if I were to perform this track live, I would probably record some drums on the go into a looper, and be like quantizing that, and I would map each part of the drum rack to a different pad on the MIDI controller, and after looping that I'd probably just trigger a conga, like a pre-recorded conga loop to go over the top of that. For bass, I would probably just trigger that to 1 button and leave that to play over the rest. For guitars, I would record that live into looper and just leave that loop going over the main kind of chorus theme, and map a button to stop that loop going during the verse parts. but I'd only record one track of it, not two, like there is in the session view. And for this synth I would do the same as the bass and just trigger that to play through the track automatically. For the white noise I'd just trigger that using one button as well. And for the high pass and low pass filters I would just map those to faders and control those just manually during the performance. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. Cheers.